And we have the wonderful Chicago Teachers Union President Stacy Davis Gates with us this morning. Good morning, Stacy. May I call you Stacy?
You better call me Stacy. Good morning.
How are you doing today? I know that's a broad question, so I asked that question.
Is.
I'm sorry. Let me hug you first and say we're gonna be all right. Then I'll shut up and let you. We're gonna be all right.
We are. We have to be. We have to be. Look, I'm not really one for grief and mourning. It's just my toxic trait, I guess. And so, like, look, it's like, this country has an addiction to election day singularly.
Yeah.
And we really have to work ourselves out of that one day.
Yep. Which is why, Stacy, that's one of the reasons why people forget about midterms, local elections, state elections, and all that stuff. That's the foundation of making sure that we can make change on a, quote, national level, is to pay attention to what your teachers union president's doing.
Listen, I went to the teachers union in 2011 to work under Karen Lewis's leadership. And when we started this endeavor to challenge status quo assumptions about public education, to challenge the apartheid system that we have here in Chicago with respect to our public schools, it wasn't popular. It still isn't popular. Mm-hmm. Asking people to give up the status quo is an everyday struggle. And, you know, I come from a group of people, my ancestors, who have told me, who have left, you know, documentation that freedom is something that you never really win and that you always work on. So those are the things that help to anchor and govern my perspective. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that I don't feel some type of way about seeing a very highly qualified Black woman really and truly present avenues for America to participate in, and they rejected her. Again, I have never met a perfect candidate. Nope. I'm sure I will never meet a perfect candidate. I've never met a perfect set of electoral conditions. What I have, encountered is that we leave our neighbors and our family members to draw conclusions between each election cycle without asking them to come knock doors with us when we are building for, you know, resistance. It wasn't just Roe versus Ray. It is also what we're consuming. Joe Rogan has the number one podcast, number one. All last spring and summer, we dealt with very toxic, racist, and sexist tropes and caricatures about women who play basketball. All of those things added up to me to an energy and a cycle that was very hostile to the type of equity that the vice president would have needed in order to win. Mm-hmm. We have to start paying attention to all of the messages, the leaders, and the things that feed the electorate. The electorate is being fed when we're not knocking doors, when we're not making phone calls, when we're not talking presidential elections. And it is very hard to use a 9-month swing, a 6-month swing to convince people who have been consuming these things for the last 4 years that those things are wrong. We really and truly have to begin to challenge status quo narratives as they are being presented and being amplified.
Wow. I mean, when someone's speaking in the way in which you do, I take notes all the time when I'm listening to people talk, but I stop taking notes and just listen to what you're saying and visually embrace that meaning, because you're absolutely right. I'll put it in slightly different words. A couple things. We have yet to tap the root problem that engulfs this country. And there's a couple of roots that need to be tapped. And one of them is what you just said about this ongoing perpetuation of misogyny and ugliness that gets into people, and they think that's the way it is. And a broader conversation about election, not, how do I want to say this? Participating in the process 24/7, not just during a cycle of any election necessarily, but always being active, always being willing to fight for the ongoing measure of freedom. I haven't heard anybody put it like that, Stacy. And I was sitting here. The one note that I did say is, I hope she's got this written down as part of something she's going to be working on as a book project, because that was powerful how you put that with the messages that your ancestors have left you. That's powerful stuff. It really, really is. And kudos to you for saying it that way. Stacy, what's, I know that, we're talking about what's happening with regard to this post-election. I'm kind of like you. Tuesday happened, and I'm feeling some way about it. At the same time, I know we have to move forward. What are you saying to people that are in your circle about that in terms of what the next represents?
Well, what I'm saying to a lot of people in my circle, my union siblings, my friends and my family, is that they have to pay attention to what we are encountering on a daily basis. My mother was so nervous the last couple of weeks, and I told her to release that, and she was like, "Well, who do you think is going to win?" And I was very vulnerable with my mom. I told her, I said, I live in a blue state, I live in a blue county, I live in a blue city, and the level of vitriol that Black female leaders receive is unparalleled. I gave her the example of our state's attorney, Kim Foxx, and all the, violence and vitriol that she had to endure for the last couple of terms of her leadership. And I said, those are the things that help inform what I think is going to happen. So I told her just to, continue to pay attention and to confront and meet the injustice where you encounter it. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing that I'm having conversations with people about is that we think that changing the hearts and minds of people, changing policy, changing status quo requires just a ballot box. So, I point to the Chicago Teachers Union. Listen, everything that we have done and continue to do as a union has been virtually impossible. When people call us crazy, they're not wrong. That's not an unreasonable way to look at it, right? Because, but for real, listen to this. We have a school system that was founded in policy and in state code as a segregated institution. So this segregation that we are still encountering and pushing back in 2024 is something that was anchored in the institution. And so it's no surprise that it is stubborn and it is hard to ameliorate it. What we have to do is fight it step by step by step. There's an elected school board in Chicago right now. The very presence of parents and families in the city being able to vote for policies that impact our children was impossible when Karen Lewis became president in 2010. And 14 years later, people participated in that. But that wasn't one ballot box. It was multiple ballot boxes. It was multiple doors knocked. It was multiple phone calls. It was a lot of things done to make that happen. Now, that was what our union has engaged in with a whole bunch of other community partners and allies and groups and organized people for over a decade. Yeah. I often tell my students as a history teacher, when did the civil rights movement begin? Did it begin when Rosa Parks sat on the back of the bus? Or refused to sit in the back of the bus, pardon me? Did it begin when Emmett Till's body was laid bare on the south side of Chicago from the brutality of white supremacy? When did it start? Did it start with Brown v. the Board of Education? Did it start with the Pullman Porters organizing? We have to be very clear that movement has different inflection points, that it is all cumulative, though, that it is all cumulative, and that we get there. I don't know how to make it go faster. I don't know how to make it easier. I don't even know how to make it painless. All I know is that if we organize, if we anchor our organizing in our values, if we find the right coalitions of people who are willing to struggle with each other for the conclusions that we all agree on, that we can get there. We had an election this past Tuesday for an elected school board in Chicago, completely unheard of in the history of this city, in the history of our school district. So while I do feel tremendous uncertainty, while this is not the type of America that makes me feel great in this moment, I am also encouraged by our ability to be resilient, to be clear-minded, and to continue to anchor our work and our values. Look, Donald Trump's values are being anchored. They're being amplified, and they're engaging people. It doesn't mean that we can't do the same thing. Find your people. Begin to engage them. Organize with them. And then find more people. We have got to talk to everyone. Listen, at the heart of everything, people want a living wage job that offers them the benefits that makes their lives a little easier, right? Healthcare. Yep. They want to live in communities that offer safety and not surveillance. They want schools that have resources that are fully funded. That doesn't matter if you're in Chatham on the south side of Chicago, or if you are in DuPage County, or if you are in Crystal Lake, Illinois. All of those things remain true. Now, the things that divide us, gender, misogyny, white supremacy, patriarchy, race, racism, those things are made up to keep our disunity. We got to fight through the hard things. People talk about reparations. We also need to talk about reconciliation. Both of those things matter. We have to start saying the word and not or. We have to be able to, we have to be able to speak and to hear. We have to be able to find what we agree on and struggle with that. Look, solidarity in a labor union that has 30,000 members is never an easy task. But this is what we promise each other in our union. We promise to struggle through the hard part and get to a place where we conclude what is best for all of us. We take a lot of votes. We have a lot of debates, and we engage and organize with each other all the time. That is the practice. That is the thing that we are doing all the time. And so I take my comfort in that.
I am so, again, this is one of those moments where I had to force myself to not take notes and just listen and embrace and picture where we go. Because anchoring our work and our values is one of the starting points and can be the starting point to then build on that. Stacy, listen, we have a tight show, as always, you know that, and I am honored and grateful that you could make it this morning. I'm glad we're able to partner. I look at you, Stacy, as a partner in this effort, and I'm going to keep doing my part to make sure I'm shouldering up with you and that our voices are heard, because we know, you know from the work that you do, that there are people that need to hear the message that you just presented. So I'm going to continue to do my part with you to make sure we get that message out. And here's my big hug to you this morning, because we're going to prosper through this and we're going to push through it and pull some folks with us along the way. So thanks for being with us this morning, Stacy. Davis Gates, CTU president, y'all.
Hey, sending that big hug and all my love back to you and all of your listeners. Thank you.
All right, Stacy, have a great day. Stay safe today.